welcome to Forging Hearts podcast, where today we'll be talking about business and busyness with Roger North. But first, welcome, Tanner.
Yeah. How are you, Nick?
Good. It's been a busy week, but it's been solid, and here it's really warming up outside. So part of me is excited, but I also get over the season very, 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 very quickly. Like, I'm not a warm weather kind of guy. I enjoy like just a little bit, but then it starts hitting 86, and I'm like,
yeah. And the humidity's not even that bad, really.
Yeah,
if you think about it, it's pretty dry in 86.
Not yet, though. And this is, I'm not much for summer, but
yeah,
I'll survive.
We'll get there. We'll get through it.
That's right.
You stay close. We'll get through it. So, Nick, I've been sort of challenging myself. So maybe I don't have the best jokes. Maybe my riddles are a little bit, leave something to be desired. So I was told this interesting fact, an interesting tidbit by a coworker the other day that blew my mind. And I've been telling it to multiple people since then, and everyone sort of looks at me with this sense of, why do you find that so interesting? But here it goes.
Okay.
Can you think of anything that you cannot buy new? You can only buy used.
You can not buy new. You can only buy used.
It's a mirror, Nick. You
Oh,
cannot, for the
goodness.
life of you, find an unused mirror.
That,
Frustrating, right?
but yet I pay full price.
Right, you pay full price for a used mirror.
What in the world?
I find that funny every time.
That is fantastic. I'm going to go home and tell my
Do
wife that.
Please do that.
I will.
And don't preface it by, this is something Tanner said, because that's...
I think that'll actually make it funny.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to get to hear from Roger this morning.
Yeah.
And when I say this morning, this afternoon, I keep getting that wrong.
It's that kind of day, huh?
It's that kind of a day.
Well, it's on that note. Then we should probably get started.
Let's do it. Well, Roger, good afternoon. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Joining us. So Roger North is joining our podcast. He's a husband, a father, founder of North Group Consultants, also the North Foundation. I saw you've been honored to be the Lancaster Small Business Person of the Year a couple years back, and serve in many different capacities on boards and ministries. So it's a great joy to have you joining us here this morning.
Thank you, Tanner.
This afternoon. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you. I was born in New Jersey, and I got here to Central Pennsylvania by going to Messiah College.
Okay.
And I met my lovely wife, Carolyn, there, and I never really went back to New Jersey. We got married right out of college. And, they say Lancaster County is a difficult place to enter into if you don't have the pedigree, you weren't born here, your name's not Horst, that kind of thing. And I think there's some truth to that, but I found that if you work at it and you are intentional about the way that you relate to people, that people are very accepting.
Yeah.
And boy, once you're on the inside, so to speak, and I imagine it doesn't feel good for some folks to be on the outside, but once you're on the inside, people will do everything they possibly can to help you. Yeah. And that's really what I've experienced by living in this, shall we call it this subculture of Lancaster County and everything that goes along with it. And it's such a vibrant place to live. I couldn't think of a better place to live.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, sometimes you take it for granted having grown up in it, right? Having grown up in the culture and the atmosphere. I for sure have taken it for granted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have 3 children, and they're all grown. They're all married, and we have 5 grandchildren. So that's super fun.
Yeah.
It's much easier the second time around.
Yeah. You enjoy living into the grandfather stage of life?
In short spurts.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a reason God gave children to young people.
For sure.
We can do about 24 hours, and then it's, it's time to.
You act like they're full of energy or something.
There's 4 of the 5 of them are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great.
And the other one just has lots of questions. Lots of questions.
And are you eager to answer those questions, or are some of them
To a
little?
point.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. That's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
So how did you get into consulting?
Yeah.
How did that start?
Yeah, not to make too long a story about it, but I was in the insurance business for 16 years after Messiah, and that was a good industry for me. I was in the property and casualty side of the business, and had 4 different employers during that period of time. And there just came a point, happened to be in 1996, a long time ago, when I was with a large insurance broker, and I was doing fine. I liked it there, and presumably they liked me. And I just had a few little things going on that I felt were Holy Spirit induced, that I felt like God was trying to get my attention.
Yeah.
And none of them were like rip your life open type of things. They were just pebble in the shoe type things. Mm-hmm. And I fancy that at that point in time, I was maybe a little bit more spiritually aware than I sometimes would be. Mm-hmm. And I started thinking about, hey, do these all add up to something? And then one day, and I tell people all the time when they ask about the story that I'm telling the story very close to the way I told it the last time. How close it is to the way it actually happened 26 years ago is maybe a different question. But at any rate, I was having my devotions one morning, my quiet time, and I really felt like I saw a vision. And the vision was such that I felt like God was telling me that I needed to make a change. Wow. And that he wasn't going to tell me what the change was, just that I needed to make a vocational change. Wow. And it was so real to me that it just didn't feel like it should be questioned. So I wrote a letter of resignation to my employer, and we worked through that. They were very, very gracious about that. But the other piece of the vision was that in resigning that job, I wasn't to look for a replacement. I wasn't to look for another position until I was completely done with the prior position. So it entailed being unemployed for a period of time. Okay. Which, people do that voluntarily or involuntarily, but it was unusual for me because I'm not much of a risk taker. Sure. But my wife is terrific. I went to her and said, I think this is what the Lord's calling me to do. I think I need to work through it. And, we've got a little bit of savings here. We'll be okay. We'll self-finance ourselves for a while till we figure this out. So that's what I did. That was the end of 1996. Wow. And then the business started in April of 97 after I went through a 3-month period of just, I call it visiting with my network. People were curious why I had done what I did, so it wasn't difficult to get appointments. I'd been in sales, so I knew how to get appointments, that sort of thing. So along the way, people just started asking me, I got a couple opportunities to go to work for somebody, didn't seem quite right. Opportunity to buy a business, that didn't seem quite right. And then people started talking to me about consulting. And I didn't know why. Yeah. It didn't sound logical to me. So they referred me to a couple folks that were in the consulting business. And what I learned from that was if I was ever going to be a consultant, I wasn't going to do it the way they were doing it. So sometimes you learn from positive conversations, and sometimes you learn from ones where you say, I don't know about that.
That's so interesting.
So I had a friend, we had worked together in the insurance business, and she was already out on her own. And she came to me one day and she said, hey, I'm out, as you know, I'm out on my own, but it's not working out the way I hoped it would. Would you, she said to me, she was a very confident, assertive person. She said, I think we should go into business together. I think I'll do sales consulting and you do management consulting. So that was our business plan right there. You just heard it. That was our whole business. Wow. So that's what we did. So it wouldn't have made sense to me in January, but it made sense to me in April,
Yeah.
just because there was a journey there.
Yeah.
So we started a business on April Fool's Day, which is April Fool's Day, 1997. So that's a long time ago,
Wow.
26 years.
That's a leap of faith by
Yeah, it was fun.
by yourself, by your wife. Did you have children at that time?
Yeah, our children were 9, 6,
Okay.
and 1
Okay.
at the time. So, you got you could worry about all that
Yeah.
stuff, like the mortgage and the car payments, all that kind of stuff. But it was just so clear to me. I don't
Yeah.
remember thinking much about that.
Okay.
And people do those things. They
Sure.
stop jobs and they go back to graduate school, or they stop jobs and go out on the mission field. So really, when you put it in context,
Sure. That's true.
it wasn't as big a deal as
Yeah.
people would make it out to be.
Wow. Boy, I was playing through different scenarios in my mind. How did Roger get to this point? Never had that one pegged.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it sounds like you made the business plan up just on the spot and just, hey, this is it. Let's just go for it.
Well, we did, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, Nick, but I think the confidence we had came from my original partner's name was Laura Sean. She's a terrific person, and the confidence we had was that we had been in the sales business before,
Sure.
and we knew that it's more common for small businesses to fail because they can't bring in revenue or manage the revenue that they bring in than it is because their capabilities aren't good enough.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
Lots of people have something good to offer the marketplace, but they don't know how to get it to the marketplace. We had confidence that we could get it to the marketplace just because we had been trained well. The company we were with before was terrific. They had a good approach, and we knew how to contact people, answer their questions,
Yeah.
and we thought we could bring in enough revenue at some point. But you're still starting from zero,
Sure.
and you still
Sure.
had bills to pay. So,
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that was a
Wow.
pretty simple business plan, and we had a few concepts in our mind as to how we could be different. They're so clear to me now after 26 years. I don't know how clear they were back then. We just thought maybe we had something to offer.
Yeah. Absolutely. Wow.
I mean, even in that context, you were talking about a very simplistic, it maybe wasn't super clear back then, maybe, or maybe it was. I mean, even that's a sign of encouragement too. Sometimes you don't need to have every single I dotted and every T crossed till you make action on something. I mean, sometimes it's like, hey, you know what? We know what we know. We're going to move forward because this is what we know, and we're going to make the best decision possible from here as we get there.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, I mean, even just getting started, getting moving on something is a great course of action, even if you don't exactly know where you'll end up.
Yeah, I mean, a good analogy for that would be marriage.
Yeah. Sure.
You know that you're reasonably sure that God has created this woman or this man for you, but you really don't know what's ahead. And I often think how good it is that God does not allow us to know about tomorrow.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
let's build up commitments and principles and follow through in our life that convinces us that when tomorrow comes, whatever it deals with us, that God will equip us to get through it. So,
Yeah.
so I'm not encouraging people to do it the way we did it necessarily, but I think there's some wisdom in what you said, Nick, that a lot of times I think it's taking a look at your own motivation. And at the time, I was pretty confident that my motivation was not overly personal. It certainly wasn't about, making a mark in the world or making a lot of money or anything like that, because honestly, it took years, probably over a decade, for me to reproduce my former income. So it was never about that, nor is it about that now. But I knew my motivation at the time was to respond to something that I thought God had put in front of me. Was I 100% sure that was Holy Spirit generated? I'm not sure how I thought about it then, but I thought I was in tune enough to know that the motivation was pure enough to make the leap. Does that
It
that make
does.
sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think a lot of it goes back to motivation. So much of what we see happen in life comes out better on the other end if we purified our motivation on the way in.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So you're, I don't know how old you would have been then, but you're balancing this new role as business leader. It was just you and your partner, as well as with family. So how did you balance that? I mean, life's busy as Nick and I are young dads and getting into businesses, and as the roles and responsibilities increase, that balance, at least in my mind, is constantly in question. There's only so many hours in a day. It's a very finite time frame. And so how do you balance that best? How have you found that you balance that well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you. Honestly, it's probably harder for me 10 years in than it was at first, because at first we just didn't have enough clients.
Sure.
I was staying at the office till 5 o'clock in hopes that something would come in that never did, that kind of thing. But more seriously, I had an example in my dad and, in the family that I grew up in, where we had dinner together every night. And my wife came from the same background. So that was normal for us, where it's not normal for other people.
Sure.
And I wanted to maintain that. We had 3 children at the time. And I was far enough along. It might have been different if I started this when I was 25, but I was 38. And I just knew from the beginning I was unwilling to sacrifice being a good husband and father for any kind of business success. That just never did occur to me that would be a good trade-off.
Yeah.
It was never an issue. Early on, though, we did have a couple opportunities early in our business to travel. Because the business we were in before, we got some calls, related to our expertise in the business we were in before. And we didn't really want to be in that business, but my partner had less home responsibilities than I had. And so she was willing to travel. And I think maybe she had some ideas, maybe I did too, about, hey, maybe we get famous or something.
Yeah.
But I remember saying to her something along the lines of, it's okay with me if you pursue those opportunities, but I need to be home for dinner 18 out of 20 nights a month for dinner.
Oh, cool.
That needs to be my commitment. And she was very respectful of that. And that became like a priority. That's the commitment that I need to have.
So you say 10 years in, business got busier.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's still, was there ever a moment where you thought, I need to make a decision, or I need to take a step back, or I need to reorganize things so that I can prioritize family or whatever it may be?
I have a tendency to make things sound more simple than they actually were, but not really.
Okay.
No, we're empty nesters now, Caroline and I are, but I can honestly tell you I look forward to going home every night, and not because I'm leaving work, because I love my work. But I look forward to walking in through the door from our garage into our kitchen and seeing my wife. And I was that way when the kids were there. And it's just such a gift to be a husband and father. It just really is. I mean, not everybody gets that chance, and not everybody had the head start that I did, because I had a father who was a gift. And I realized not everybody had that experience, so they have to figure it out some other way. But I always just felt that I have this philosophy that what you had to do expands to fill the time you have to do it in.
What you have to, I have to let that sit a little bit. Say it again.
What you have to do expands to fill the time you have to do it in.
Okay.
So let me give you an example. Like on a Saturday, I like to do yard work. So, mow the lawn, trim the bushes, edge the wall, whatever those things are. On a Saturday, when I have pretty much all day, it will take me much longer to do those things than if I do them on a Tuesday night when it's 6:45 and getting dark at 8.
Sure.
Wow.
And so I apply the same principle to work, which is if you define the hours that you have to work, you can organize yourself in such a way that you will get those things done. Now, if you get too big for your britches, you know, meaning like, oh yeah, we want to be we want to grow like 25% a year.
Yeah.
You'll mess that up, so to speak. But I think even naming a growth pace in your business, which we did when we were growing fast, you know, like 15 years ago, and again recently, for a personal services business like ours, 15%. Don't try anything more than that because eventually it'll rupture somebody.
Okay.
And what's the point? So I don't know if you could put those two things together, but in the busiest parts of my life, I would say that I said I'll work 6:30 to 6 Monday to Friday.
Okay.
And that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it was barricaded in such a way that it didn't have a huge impact on my family. I would say, though, that I didn't go to every Little League practice when my son was playing baseball. I didn't think it was necessary. I didn't think he cared. There were good coaches there. And I'm not arguing with somebody that would.
Right.
But there were things that our family understood that when Dad was at work, he was at work.
Sure.
And Dad was at home, he was at home. And if I could deliver on that, that was more than enough for my wife and more than enough for our family. So, you know, just people say it's 100 different ways, but be fully present.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I think humans can do that.
Yeah.
They really concentrate on it. But for the most part, I've been able to stick to that plan.
Yeah.
So whatever I could produce within, say, 6:30 to 6, 5 days a week, or however you want to define that, that needed to be good enough.
Yeah.
And fortunately, for the most part, it was.
Yeah.
What's so interesting what you talked about there is talking about being present, because I think that's the challenge of a lot of people today, not just dads, but when you go home, it's so easy to be, and I'm guilty of this, checking email and work email, and we're just living in a different, humans are capable, yes, but as a society continues to push that Elon Musk style where we're sleeping in our own business, which is just crazy. And that's the definition of success by society.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I know that it's more tempting now because you have a computer in your pocket all the time and you can feel a buzz and all those kinds of things. But it's just discipline.
Yeah.
And discipline. Why would we discipline ourselves? Well, we would discipline ourselves to reinforce our priorities. Yeah. And if you have clarity around what your priorities are, it makes the discipline that much easier. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if my priority is to be, like right now, I'm with Tanner and Nick. I'm happy to be with Tanner and Nick. I was looking forward to this opportunity. I don't need to be thinking about anything else. If we're done in an hour or 2 hours, I'll pay attention to the fellow that I have an appointment with at 3 o'clock, who will be my highest priority at 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then I'll get home at 5:15, and my wife will be my highest priority at 5:15, which isn't hard because my wife is just terrific.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And
so I don't mean to overstate. I know a lot of people battle with that, but I just think it has a lot to do with declare your priorities and then be disciplined about how you're executing those priorities. And that's easier said than done. But
well, to add to your point there, is the battle simply naming the priority? Because I just think people don't talk about it, or at least out loud,
or get challenged about it.
Okay, that's
like
fair.
I have a friend. I'll tell you a quick story. I have a friend. He's a business guy, wonderful guy, just terrific guy. He's a good family guy. So he's getting toward the end of his business, and he said to me one day, "Hey, Roger," he said, "I think we should get a valuation for our business." I said, "Okay, why do you think we should get that?" "Well, there's a lot of money out there in private equity, and it's maybe at its highest point it's going to be." And I said, "Yeah, I've heard that's true. Why do you care?" And he said, "Well, in case I have to sell the business, let's just see how much it's worth." I said, "Well, why would we do that now?" And he said, "Well, because it might be worth more than another time." I said, "Why do you care?" I said, and he said, what do you mean, why do I care? It's might be the highest value of my business. I said, well, what are you going to do with the money? You already have. I mean, this is a guy, he's been very successful.
Yeah.
This is a terrific guy. But what's the difference here?
Yeah.
Like, is there really a difference between whatever the numbers are, 12 million or 15 million or 500,000 or 750,000?
Right.
Like, who cares? Because I knew that didn't really line up with his priorities. There's nothing. I knew him. I've been friends with him for 25 years. I knew that it wasn't like, oh, it's the joy of my life to build a $12 million house at, the shore or something.
Yeah.
That wasn't him. That's not his deal. Like, why do you care?
Yeah.
And I think people get drawn into the competition battle or the money battle. And I can understand on a certain level, but bring it back to where you're called to be.
Yeah.
Bring it back to your priorities. Is your priority to get $3 million more for your business? And if so, why?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things I like to help people with and help myself with is let's go back to why we're doing this. Let's go back to priorities.
Sure.
That's excellent.
And that could be used in business, in your home life, in your church life, in
Any of
whatever
those.
ministry.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Huh. So is there something, and maybe it's something you touched on already with discipline and figuring out your priorities, but as you think of being a leader in those different organizations, is there a common denominator? As far as, be disciplined. That's maybe it's something is that simple that you've been touching on.
Well, words get thrown around a lot, and so integrity would be the first word that comes to my mind. Now, the root word, I'm pretty sure I'm right about this, so I'm not an etymologist, a wordsmith, but I'm pretty sure that the root word of integrity is integrate.
Okay.
So to me, and if it's not, I'm going to use it anyway.
Run with it.
That to me, integrity is about integrating your priorities or your beliefs with your intentions and with your actions. And so when we're really talking about somebody that has integrity, it's because we can easily see how those things line up.
Sure.
So an important piece for a lot of people, and for me, so this is not unique to me, would be I am going to do what I say I'm going to do. And that would be a principle I would have as a leader.
Sure.
Now, what that requires is that I not be too quick to say what I'm going to do.
Sure. Okay.
Until I evaluate how that lines up with my priorities.
Yeah.
Because I could get myself into a situation where I would say I'm going to do this or that or this for another organization and find out I can't do that in my 6:30 to 6 Monday to Friday. It's more than I can handle. Well, I need to back up and decide, well, why did I even say that to begin with? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I think for me, the consistency, the leadership consistency would be in being able to follow through on the things that you're committed to. A good example, well, this is good, you can decide whether this is a good example or not. But when people get asked to serve, say, on a church board or be an elder or be a board of directors or to serve a community organization, which I'm sure you guys do, I've done a lot of that in my life. A lot of times people will come to me and say, hey, what do you think about me, joining the board of XYZ? And I say, well, what did they tell you about what the responsibilities on the board will be? And generally my advice would be, this is with respect to, say, joining a community or church board. I'd say, whatever they told you about the amount of time that it would take, triple it.
Okay.
Because mainly, and they're not trying to fool you, mainly what they're telling you is the amount of in-person time
Sure.
that they're asking you to take on at the beginning. Well, if you're going to prepare well, if you're going to follow up well, if you're going to do something other than just attend a meeting, it's going to take more time than that. And if you start doing those things, you're probably going to get more responsibility inside that organization because not everybody's handling it that way. So they're going to ask to be chair of a committee or get on the executive committee. So just know that's coming and evaluate it in that span of time rather than in the 1/3 span of time. Then the second thing, this has been my personal experience, is that at some point during that commitment, whether it's starting a business, whether it's becoming a father, becoming a husband, getting on a board, being on a church board, something that you're not expecting is going to come along. And in all likelihood, it's going to come along at the most inopportune time in your life.
Isn't that the truth?
And if you want to jump off the ship at that point, don't ever get on the ship.
Sure.
Because it's probably going to happen.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, if it doesn't, bless you. I'm glad the organization handled itself so well that you never. But that's been my experience, that at most points as I've gotten into different ministries or different boards, sooner or later something happens that requires a lot of additional energy and time. And I want to be the person that's ready for that and has organized my life in such a way that I can execute on that original responsibility.
I'll be honest, as I'm listening to you, I'm really feeling like if you're a person, and I'll speak for myself, I'm a very distracted person. Everything you're talking about requires a very good self-awareness and self-reflection, and to really name stuff out loud with somebody who you're accountable to. So, for example, even saying some of these things out loud to my wife. Because everything you're talking about is very intentional and it requires some thought beyond a momentary thought.
Yeah.
Like it takes time. You talk about being on a board, I'd be like, well, sure, I'll take 10 minutes to think about it. Man, maybe even 5 minutes. But you're talking about, okay, what are my priorities? And once I name those priorities, okay, now do these line back with my priorities and my other commitments that I have going on. And, every single thing there just takes intentionality.
Yeah. And when pride gets in the way, I know for myself, when someone asks you to be a part of something, well, that's an honor.
Yeah, sure.
Oh,
I'd be
yeah.
honored to do that and to say no. Well,
Ego boost a little bit.
right. But yeah, it feels like a feather in your cap when you get, well, I serve on this, I serve on that.
Yeah.
But how do you look past that? And yeah, very intentional, it seems like what you've done.
Well, I think Nick brings up a good point, and I'm probably making it sound easier than it is. Now, I've got 30 years on you guys. So.
Well, I don't know. I'm thinking this is going to take some work.
Well, I have a life of, obviously having made some mistakes in that arena. But you've probably played this game where you find out that you know the same person. You didn't really know the same person, and you say, hey, what do you think of when you think of that guy? And you immediately say a word, or a phrase. And I've said for years, if that conversation goes on about me, I wish it were like handsome, debonair, charming, these sorts of things. But that word is almost always intentional.
Yeah.
I'm probably maybe gifted in that area. I don't know, you guys familiar with the Strengths Finders? It's a Gallup assessment.
Okay.
35 areas of human strength, and you can take this assessment. It points out your 5 biggest areas of strength. So mine are like the most boring in the world. And 2 of them are focus and discipline.
Wow.
And that adds up to intentionality, the ability to just think things through and then say you're going to do it. But I don't have the gift of being creative and lots of other things that people admire.
Yeah.
And I'm not easily distracted.
Yeah.
And so to your point, Nick, about being easily distracted, is that a challenge? Well, sure. Yeah. And are people that are easily distracted more fun to be around? Yeah, because they've thought about more things. They've chased more butterflies.
Yeah.
I don't really chase many butterflies, so I'm actually pretty boring to be around. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but you're a fun guy to have here with us today anyways.
But in some ways intentionality is boring. But
sure.
it has been a guiding star in my life.
But it's benefited you and your family and your business.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting.
And what was the name of that? You said that survey, or not the
It's
survey,
called Strengths Finder. It's now called Strengths Finder 2.0.
Okay.
And I don't need to be a shill for it, but when it first came out, it was actually over 20 years ago. I was fascinated with the idea because I like strengths-based psychology, and I bought the book and I took the assessment right away. And as soon as the assessment came out, it gave me these 5 areas of human strength, and I thought, man, this is it. This is me. The 5 that came out were just like they made so much sense to me. And I'm a believer in spending the most time in your areas of strength and not not being overly concerned with things that you're not very good at if you can find other people to do them.
Sure. Sure.
So I don't repair my own refrigerator.
Sure.
Or even replace my own garbage disposal. Or basically even hang my own pictures. Because it's just
Sure.
an exercise in frustration.
That makes sense.
That's cool.
When working for someone else, to this point, you started your own business. Tanner is now, helping to lead the charge of his business, me at my business.
Yep.
There's a lot of jobs out there, pretty much almost all the jobs out there that require reporting
Right.
to someone. So
Right.
how do you, what's your advice to those people, those fathers who are trying to balance, but maybe with unreasonable expectations or different priorities? My father-in-law worked third shift for 32 years, and he'll probably correct me, 32 or 33 years, but third shift is that's nasty stuff.
Yeah.
Rolling.
Yeah, well, I worked for other people for 16 years, and that was fine with me. I enjoyed that. Honestly, I was never asked to do something that was at odds with my priorities, but I will tell you one quick story that may help. For 1 year, I went to work for a national company, a big corporation. And after I was there for about 6 months, I had a management job. My boss, who I liked a lot, he helped me quite a bit. He called me and he said, "Hey, Roger," he said, "you've really helped us here. Things are going well here. I think you have a career here with this company." I said, "Well, thank you." He said, let me just chart out a little bit what this is probably going to look like. And it was in central Pennsylvania. And he said, obviously we need you to stay here for another couple of years, but at some point we're gonna offer you a job in our regional office in North Jersey. And so you go to North Jersey, and then you'll be a so-and-so in North Jersey. If you do well at that, then we'll ask you to move our home office, which is in Chicago, and you'll get experience there doing X, Y, and Z. He said, "You know what? Once you've done those two things, at some point we'll come to you and say, hey, there's a high-level manager job available in Albuquerque or Sacramento or Pierre, South Dakota, or wherever it might be, and you'll get your choice of those." And after that conversation, I thought, I can't stay with this company. Because right there, that was very kind of him to do that, and that was the path that he had gone, and he regarded himself as a successful person, and by a lot of measures he was. That would have not been success for me, and I knew it at the time. I'm not criticizing other people to do that. My best friend from college did that. Still married to the same woman. He's a great father and grandfather. They moved all over the country, and he did well. I have no criticism of that. But I knew that as soon as I had that conversation, I thought, okay, I can't stay with this company real long because that's just not a path that I'm going to go.
Is that because you had named your priorities out ahead of time? Like you knew what they were. So
well, I knew Carolyn and I wanted to raise our family in central Pennsylvania. And that wasn't going to work in North Jersey. And my wife was, she was born in Lidditz.
Yeah.
I think she's, to get her out of Lidditz, I'm going by myself. And I wasn't too interested in that. So
that's funny.
That was a way to forestall that type of thing. Now, you asked a question about, I was never asked to do that. And I didn't want to put my boss in a position where I would stay a couple more years, and he thought that's the route I was going to go. And they offered me a position in North Jersey. So I never intended to go to North Jersey to begin with. That wouldn't have been fair to the employer because they were putting time and effort into developing me toward that. So I didn't want to put them in that position either. So I think there are situations where people are asked to do more than they should or something, work more hours or whatever that might look. If it's an ethical thing, like, asking somebody to paint the books wrong or something, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But if it's, like, say, the number of hours, so you're getting home after your kids are in bed consistently and that sort of thing, I think the reason that most people get into that situation and can't get out of it is because they've already locked themselves into a lifestyle that requires that they continue to do that. And I just think that takes forethought, is is $20,000 more a year or $200,000 more a year, whatever that number is, that worth it to me? And if your answer to that is yes, then that charts a certain course. And if your answer to that is no, then that charts a certain course.
Yeah.
And I don't want to oversimplify it, but
Right.
No.
I think you just need to think ahead about those types of things. Now, sometimes things change within an organization, and you get somebody that's demanding more of you than what you can give, and it just begs a choice.
Sure.
But number one, don't get overextended to begin with.
Yeah.
It does relate to lifestyle choices that we make
Yeah.
on some degree. Because the large majority of people that I talk to that are looking for career advice, what keeps them from moving out of whatever business or vocation they're in now and moving into one that they've always dreamed about is that they are unwilling to make the financial sacrifice. So they've been in a business for 15 years. Let's pick a number. They're making, $90,000 a year, and they want to be a school teacher. I think that's a laudable thing to do. Okay, let's go back. Let's go another year and get our teaching certificate, and then you can get an entry-level job as a school teacher at whatever that number is, $50,000 a year. No, they can't do that. Well, you've charted your own course.
Yeah.
It is.
And is that a practical thing? Yeah, that's a practical thing, but
Sure.
you're making choices all along the way that restrict your choices for the future. And I think as followers of Jesus, we need to keep in mind that our plans and his plans are not always the same.
Yeah.
And if we're not building some flexibility in and even time in to somehow listen to those little pebbles in the shoe or those little prods that we get from the Holy Spirit, then that's a mistake right there. And it's not easy to do, and it's not easy to interpret. I'm not making it out to be like it's a Damascus Road type of experience for all of us. But I think those two things are essential.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
Absolutely. I think so.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you touched on at the very beginning of this podcast, you said you were doing your devotions when you had this vision, or I may be choosing that word wrong. And then you also just spoke about making sure that you set aside time. And as believers, we're called to set aside time to focus on the Lord, to dig in more. And so one thing that I've been trying to find a good time in my life is for devotions. That's an easy thing to say, well, I woke up a little bit later this morning. We'll push that off till the evening. Well, you get home and you're tired. You got kids running around. The last thing I'm looking to do is I shouldn't say last thing, but it can too easily get pushed off. What has worked in your life to do that?
Well, I don't want to sound overly formulaic here. So anybody that's listening, apply this to your own context. But on my phone, I get a news feed every day. I think it's from Apple, but whoever it's from, it'll give you like 4 or 5 teasers, like headlines. And then it'll say, start your day here. I can't think of a worse idea. And I say that to people, I can't think of a worse idea than the first thing that I'm going to do in the morning is read about the problems in the world. That's just a really bad way to start off the day.
Sure.
Yeah.
So to me, to start off the day in prayer, to however you do it, to dedicate, at least be intentional about. And again, I don't want to be formulaic, but this morning when I woke up, I would have thought about the appointment I had at 8 o'clock, the one I had at 10, this one, and the one I have at 3 o'clock today. And I would have just prayed that I would be the best human representation of Jesus that I could be in each of those meetings. Now, did I accomplish that today? Probably not. But at least start out with that intention.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I, first thing in the morning, before I read the newspaper, before I check my email, for heaven's sake, before I read an Apple headline, just ground myself in my relationship with Jesus Christ and the Word. Why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah.
Why would I let anything get in the way of that? Now, I'm an empty nester. Okay, there's not children waking up early in my house.
Yeah.
I don't have to milk cows. Those sorts of things. But I just, wherever you put that in, to me, to put it in first thing in the morning is by far the best.
Sure. Prioritizing it.
Yeah. And when I got a lot of guys ask me about that, and I said, well, why don't you just try it? And then I'll ask them the next month and say, well, some days I did and some days I didn't. Well, tell me about the days that you didn't. Well, it's usually something, frankly, stupid, like I had an early morning appointment, so get up earlier.
Yeah.
What's so complicated about that? It all goes back to priorities.
Sure.
So I might be an easily distracted person, but I love getting up early in the morning. So this is something I can take home for sure.
Yeah.
First person up in the household.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
good stuff.
That's
right there.
beautiful.
Yeah. Especially when it's dark.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that wholeheartedly. My wife probably doesn't. She's
Right.
the night owl of our household.
And listen, my wife doesn't get up at the time I do.
Yeah.
That's fine. She has her actually a similar discipline, just occurs at a different time of day.
Sure.
And I have great respect for that. But again, I think it's just there's so many ways in which your habits form your. You've heard your habits form your character. Your
Sure.
character forms your life. Your life informs your destiny. That kind of thing. Well, we all have habits. It's just that some of them are intentional and some of them are unintentional.
Yeah.
And if we can untie some of the unintentional ones that aren't adding up to reinforce our priorities and focus more on the ones that are, we'll probably be more successful and at least reflecting our priorities.
Yeah. Well, Roger, this has been super beneficial.
Yeah.
This has been awesome to get to dig into this, to hear a lot of your thoughts and some of your experiences and stories that you
Can
have.
I give you one more?
Please do.
Okay. Yeah.
Please
So
do.
my favorite Old Testament character, and I'm sure I'm not alone on this, is Moses.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is this great, you guys know this, but it's in Exodus chapter 32, 33. So Moses is leading, the people through the wilderness, or through the desert, I should say. And they have this place called the tent of meeting. Mm-hmm. And so Moses goes to the tent of meeting every day to meet with the Lord.
Sure.
And as he walks to the tent of the meeting, all the Israelites come out of their tent and watch him walk there.
Huh.
That's in the scripture, Exodus chapter 33, I think. The theologians might. We're in the book of Exodus anyway. I'm sure we are. I might be mixing two stories together. But two things I love about Moses. One, I thought about that and I thought, what would that do for my ego if every day, like for instance, in my own business, if everybody said, oh, Roger just walked in the door, let's all stand outside our offices and honor him while
They
he
don't
walks
do
by.
that, you're saying.
They do not do that. In fact, I don't even think they know it. But what would that do for your ego?
Sure.
But then there's this verse in Numbers, it's actually Numbers 12:3. And it says, now the man Moses was the most humble man on the face of the earth. How do you cultivate humility in the face of that kind of honor?
Sure.
And I think the answer is Moses spent so much time in the presence of a holy God. How could he not be humble?
Yeah.
Wow.
So the lesson for us would be, if you struggle with humility, which most men do at some point, and I admit it's a titanic struggle for me, although I have, heaven knows I have tons of reasons to be humble, but is to spend more time with the Almighty God. Now, and the distance between who I am as a human and who God is as the everlasting creator, that's a pretty big distance in which I ought to be able to cultivate humility.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite
Yeah.
verses. And actually, it's an interesting verse, Numbers 12:3, if you want to look it up. The verse in most translations is in parentheses. And I don't think it should be in parentheses, but it says, now the man Moses was the most humble man on the face of the earth. Now, the only time I've been challenged on that is when I said that to somebody else, and they said, yeah, but didn't Moses write Numbers? Well, and I countered that with, it's the inspired word of God.
Yeah,
so
that's
I'm not going
right.
to argue with that.
We can ask him someday. Maybe.
Yeah. So
That's
I just
hilarious.
think the spending time, in the presence of the Lord, which none of us really does enough, and I don't either. Yeah. Cultivates a heart of humility, which I think really is at the core of leadership.
Yeah. Wow. Yay and amen to that.
Absolutely. 100%.
That's awesome. Is there anything else? I do not want to cut you off, but I want to respect your time too.
I'm glad you added that last part.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Well, there's one more thing about Moses. You guys are goading me on here.
Please.
That I love. So, and it's, again, I'm probably mixed up in my chapters here in Exodus, but you probably know that Moses got the Ten Commandments 2 different times. The first time he went up, then he came down, he saw the golden calf, and he smashed the tablets because he's so mad. God called him up onto Mount Sinai a second time. The second time he was up there, and it might have been true the first time too, 40 days and 40 nights without food or water. Now, nobody would recommend that, but obviously he was being sustained by God's Holy Spirit. So when he came down the second time, he had to put a veil over his face because people would not look at him because his face was so radiant.
Wow.
Why was his face so radiant? Because he spent all that time in the presence of a holy God.
Wow.
And I think to myself, could I ever get to the point where I spend so much time in the presence of God that my face or my being, I guess you would say, would begin to reflect the radiance of a holy God. And we all have access to that.
Wow.
It's just a matter of how much we let it seep into our spirit.
Yeah.
And every once in a while you meet a person, and I have a friend, his name is Greg, and every time I'm with him, I'm thinking, man, the time he spends with God is just shining through in just about every sentence that he says to me. I think, what a gift.
Wow.
That is wonderful.
Yeah. That is.
So, I'm pursuing the radiant face of Moses, but most of you would just say, no, you just look old.
No, that's I've never thought about it that way. Because I've read that passage, but I've never thought and then related that to we can spend time with the Lord. And
when I even think, going way back to the beginning of this podcast, you were talking about your own dad. Mm-hmm. I mean, was he that type of guy that you've seen his being? Yeah. He was a blessing to you, greatly. And is that because he was before the Lord so much?
I think so. I have good memories of my dad in a lot of ways. Now, he died prematurely. He died almost 40 years ago, before I had children even. But any Saturday morning that I would come down the stairs, he would be, other mornings he was already gone because he had a fairly long commute. But every Saturday morning when I'd come down, he would be at his makeshift desk studying for either the Bible study he was going to lead that night or the Sunday school lesson he would teach the next day. And that's why he got up early on Saturday, because he wanted to be out in front of the family and have that time to prepare. I'm guessing that he had some other discipline that it was employed on weekdays. I just don't know what it was.
Yeah.
But he reflected. And, I probably romanticized my dad because he was gone. He's been gone for so long. But I can't really think of anything that I wish he had done differently. Which gives me a huge advantage in life because most guys have some kind of father thing going on, But I think if I could reflect he was a very gentle person, very loving person, humble, but people admired him. Mm-hmm. And I don't have exactly the same personality as him, but I want to cultivate some of those characteristics. And I think it did come from those early mornings.
Yeah,
there it is.
Yeah, I'm reminded that our children. We learn more from what people do than what they say.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. So reminded of that. And need to remember that a lot of times. So to sort of cap this off, we've got just a lighthearted lightning round of questions.
Okay.
If you don't mind,
it'd be beautiful.
Just first thing that comes to your mind. Love to know it.
A little less depth, though.
Okay.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Yes.
But they're fun.
We'll get into the kiddie pool here.
Which do you prefer, scrapple, sausage, or bacon?
Sausage.
Sausage.
Yeah,
Okay.
scrapple is a little out there for me.
Okay.
There you give yourself away in Lancaster County a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah.
But
You could have asked me about puddings.
Oh.
okay.
Go ahead.
No. It's worse than scrapple.
Okay.
Okay, I'm with you.
Favorite book?
Oh, you think I'm not going to say the Bible?
Well,
No, beyond that, I have several. One is called Let Your Life Speak by Parker Palmer. One is called, and these are very simple. Well, Parker Palmer's not simple, but The Way of the Shepherd is a very simple leadership book, not written with references to the Bible, but clearly biblical in nature. And we give that to most of our clients when we start out.
okay. I just read that one.
Did you?
Excellent
Isn't
book.
it cool?
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, so those are two of my favorites.
Okay.
Yep.
That's awesome. Do you prefer dinner or breakfast?
Wow, I love both of those. I'm not real big on lunch. I'll have to go with dinner because it has more variety.
Okay.
Yeah, my wife is just an excellent cook, but she doesn't get up early enough to make breakfast.
Sure. That's fair. So I know you're an avid golfer.
Yeah,
Do you have a favorite golf course?
I do. Yeah, Harbortown Golf Links, Hilton Head, South Carolina.
Okay.
Right.
They're playing in North Carolina right now.
They're playing the
PGA.
course I just named.
Is that right?
They're playing there right now.
Oh.
Yeah.
you
So we
have-
got to stop this so I can get home and
Yeah,
watch.
I was
No,
going to
just
say,
kidding.
my last one is, do you have a favorite golfer to watch?
I like Rory McIlroy, but he frustrates me. Yeah. Actually, I would say my favorite golfer to watch are my son and my son-in-law. 'Cause,
wow.
they both play.
That's
and
awesome.
to play with my son and my son-in-law that's just a joy.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a joy when my son hammers me by 15 strokes because he's an excellent player, but we have a good time together.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing
Hey,
again.
thanks,
This has
Tyler.
been
Thanks,
a-
Nick. This was an honor.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been the opportunity. You came highly recommended, and I can see why.
I
So
appreciate it.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Yes.